6th video. Right, so this is going to be about Facebook, and again, one context in Facebook. There's a bunch of understanding, and without having this understanding, right, so I don't have like a particular best way to explain it, so I'm going to explain whatever I remember. As I told you, if we test products and if there are sales, and the pixel gets data from multiple avatars, like somebody that buys dog food, somebody that buys horse products and whatever, it gets like a representation of what the customer is, but it's like a messy representation that will sabotage the optimization of the pixel. So by testing products with a testing pixel that has sales from many different places, that was one of the reasons why it was hard to, well, not the only reason, but it was like a significant element that messed things up, right? So one contextual element with Facebook is definitely to have like a clean pixel when testing, right? Because if not, even though the cost per purchase is low, but it will not necessarily be low, it will be high, because if it has certain avatars and it goes for that particular people, those particular people will also not be interested in the ad for a different sort of product, right? So that's why it might result in high cost per clicks. But even if the cost per clicks are low, there's going to be a low conversion rate as long as the pixel is messed up, right? So working with a clean pixel, and then whenever there's testing for another product, getting another clean pixel instead of testing the new products with the pixel that's used for a particular product that's scaling, for example. And essentially what I'm saying is, if we test 10 products, the best practices is to make 10 different pixels. 10 different pixels, each one for each product, right? Of course, there are exceptions, right? If we test things in batches, let's say we test 10 products at the same time in one particular day, and you know, some of them don't get any sales, some of them get one sale, that's not a huge tragedy, right? Because the pixel doesn't really make much of an impact if it has 2 sales on board, right? So if we test, we can use a clean pixel for every batch of 10 products that we're going to test within a day, right? That's what I'm basically saying, right? But the concept of a clean pixel is quite like makes for us a context that's important to bear in mind, right? So this is one thing, very important one thing. Right, let's see what else. Essentially, the most important things regarding Facebook are the following. So, you know, whenever I say these are the important things, it's not only to say and to think, okay, yes, it seems like they're important. The reason why I'm saying what's important, more importantly, is to highlight what's not important, right? So for example, campaign structure is not important. Whether it's AOB or CBO, it's not important. Whether it's 5 ads per ad set or 5 ad sets or 10 ad sets per campaign, it doesn't matter at all. So campaign structure doesn't matter. And there are other things that don't matter. For example, ad format. There's not really a big distinction between story ads and, well, you know, it might be, but it's not so important. Anyway, the point is that I'm going to mention the most important things, and here is the place to focus, right? Focusing somewhere else leads to minor improvements and robs away from the opportunity to focus on other important things outside of Facebook, right? So regarding Facebook, the most important variables are the ads, of course, and then we have the targeting. Then we have the daily budget. The daily budget actually plays an important role, right? Because if everything is the same, having a particular daily budget for an ad set, it's sort of like it's complicated to explain this, but there are a certain amount of slots every single hour for potential buyers in particular auctions. And if the budget is higher than it allows for those slots, then the cost per purchase will increase just because there's wasteful spend in those, like per hour, right? Rather than hitting the perfect daily budget amount. Okay. Also, having too low of a budget has its own drawbacks by not optimizing it in the best way. So there is a particular sweet spot of the daily budget. Then the bidding strategy is important, and then of course the bid, and then there's country. Country might be more important than the last one. Right, those are the important things to focus on Facebook. Okay, now there are other intangible things which are, the question is how do we scale, right? Do we increase the budget or duplicate, right? So it seems that increasing the budget always messes up the ad set, always. There is an explanation why, and it's more like, of course, it changes the amount of budget per unit of time, and if Facebook is optimized to getting buyers in a certain way, that extra budget per unit of time will be a waste because it wouldn't necessarily know how to act, at least in the first days, and it would be wasteful spend, which will increase the cost per purchase. Whereas, okay, so what's the deal with duplicating? Well, here's the thing. I've seen this a bunch of times, and it's also makes a lot of sense theoretically. A particular ad set optimizes as it gets sales, right? So as every single ad set gets sales, it gives the pixel proper information. But whenever there's a new ad set, it kind of like piggybacks on the information that the pixel gathered from the other ad sets. And as long as the dupe uses that particular pixel, it sort of like gets a good education from the start. That's why, with dresses, every single new ad set kind of got the same cost per purchase because it piggybacked on the pixel understanding from any other ad set. But it also learns from its own activity. So in a sense, an ad set with a lot of sales will perform better than a duplicate. Okay, so let's see. When we have a good ad set that's performing well, of course, to scale, we need to do one of those two things, right? Increase the budget or duplicate. So increasing the budget messes up the ad set. Okay. So clearly that's a wrong thing. Even if it's 5% or 20% of some people say, duplicating makes the ad set start from scratch. So in a sense, it's not as good as the original one because it starts learning from scratch, but it's going to become as good as the original, right? So basically the strategy for scaling is to take an ad set that's working and to duplicate it at higher and higher budgets. It was an approach talked about by some guy, what was his name, Matt something, in 2018. So he was like, okay, so if an ad set is making money at $30, and this is what I used with the smartwatch, right? Duplicate it at 2x the budget and 3x the budget, and then wait. And then if those are working well, duplicate them at 2x and 3x the budget until there's a sweet spot of the daily budget. So that's one thing. So that's how scaling is done, basically. Now, of course, every single element that's being changed in the ad set, if it's adding a different ad alongside the other ad in the ad set, that's messing everything up. If it's a change in the ad, even a small change, which is adding a UTM parameter to track performance, that's messing everything up. Even if it's changing the targeting, if it's changing the placements, even small changes like changing from people that use Wi-Fi versus not, every single thing messes the optimization of the ad set, right? So basically the ad set should not be touched, not at all, right? Right, so the ad set that's working well shouldn't be touched, and there should be duplicating at higher and higher budgets, right? So that's basically the contextual structure. Now let's build upon that. So essentially, the first context is the clean pixel and to take care of it, and the second one was to scale properly. The third thing is that, of course, we want to test multiple ads and multiple targetings and multiple bidding strategies in multiple countries, right? Now, there is a particular way to split this properly, right? So it's called single variable split testing versus multivariable split testing, right? So for example, if it's, let's say that we want to test two different ads and we want to test two different targetings, right? So two different interests and two different ads. Well, one way that somebody might do it, which is wasteful, is to do ad 1 with targeting 1, ad 1 with targeting 2, ad 2 with targeting 1, and ad 2 with targeting 2. Now, it's wasteful because let's say that ad 1 is better than ad 2. So the proper way is to do a single variable split test, which is to test ad 1 versus ad 2, and then ad 1 wins, and then to use ad 1 that won with the two targetings. So now the two targetings will be using ad 1, which is better than ad 2, instead of wasting money with ad 2, which is inferior to ad 1, and with those two targetings, right? So it's always better to do single variable split test. Now, if we want to test 8 different ads, sure, we're gonna have 8 different split tests, right? Because it's still one variable split test, right? But it's just that there are 8 different instances in that variable. So for example, if we have, let's say, 8 ads that we want to split test and 5 targetings and 3 daily budgets, we will do 8 tests for ads, like 1 for each, and we will pick the best ad. And then with that best ad, we will go onwards and we will do 5 tests for each one of those targetings. And then we will pick the best one. So now we will go with the best ad and the best targeting and do the free bidding strategies, right? So in a sense, we're using the best element from before and we're going onwards. The bad way to test would be, oh yeah, let's test all the ads with all the targetings and with all the bidding structures, like in a random way, all at the same time, or in a very unstructured way, right? So that's a huge thing, right? So one variable split test. The other important element when doing this thing is statistical significance, of course. So this is more important than I thought, because it turns out that if a particular ad gets $20 cost per purchase and another one gets $80 cost per purchase, it's wrong to assume that one of them is 4 times better, because if one of them gets 4 sales for $80, which results in $20 cost per purchase, and one of them gets 1 sale after $80, which results in $80 cost per purchase, we have to simply look at the fact that one of them got 4 sales while the other one got 1 sale. And then if more times goes on, then the one with 1 sale will get probably 3, and the one that had 4 sales might stagnate at 4. And then more time goes on, and the one that was stagnating at 4 gets 5 sales, but the one that reached 3 sales would now get 5 sales as well. So it like caught up with it. And then more time goes on, and the one with 5 sales, the bad one, gets 10 sales and the other one gets 7. So now it's better. But then more time goes on, and the one with 7 reaches 14, while the one that reached 10 only reaches 11. So my point is that initially there's so much chaos, and one of them is better than the other, and then the other one is better than the other, right? So it's like very, very unpredictable and very based on luck initially. So whenever we split test, it's very, very important. And this is not only regarding Facebook, but regarding those product page elements as well, right? Which is one page conveys a certain frame a certain way, and that certain frame in another way. It's important to wait for statistical significance, right? And the point that I've seen that the statistical significance, it reaches a point where the variation is no longer so random. Basically, the point where it's quite a stable distinction between a loser and a winner. It's at the 20 results mark, right? So the 20 results mark. That's like a good statistical significance in Facebook, at least, or using Facebook. So those are two very, very, like, extremely incredible things to take into account, right? So, and I think the last thing that I should mention about Facebook is this whole thing about bidding, like I told you before, and let me include it here as well. So Automatic bidding, also known as lower cost bidding, essentially it states that its objective is to get the most amount of sales that it can within the particular budget. Whereas the cost cap wants to make sure that the cost per purchase is within the cap that's set. And on the surface, it looks like, oh, well, in both cases, Facebook prioritizes for cheap results, right? But there's this distinction. The actual priority in automatic bidding is to spend the daily budget. And we can see this, that every time it actually manages to spend the daily budget. So if it's a very, very bad day and there's nobody that wants to buy, Facebook will spend the daily budget, even though there's nobody that wants to buy. Whereas, right, and Facebook, and the cool thing is that Facebook knows this. Facebook knows that it's going to blast for that budget because the bidding structure is automatic bidding, and the priority is to spend that budget, even though it knows that it's not going to get any sale. And this is the evil thing, but actually it's warning us, but it's so like hidden, and we're right. But it's actually warning us that its priority is to spend the daily budget. Whereas the cost cap, what the cost cap would do is, as long as Facebook notices that in that day there aren't potential buyers for that particular product, based on what it's learned from the pixel, and that's why training the pixels is fundamental. Okay, so as long as it knows that there aren't buyers, it won't spend the budget, right? Now, at low budget, this is not important, but it's extremely important at high budgets, right? So the cost cap is the way to go for stable results at high budgets. I guess that this is one of the most important things when it comes to scaling. Right, so I mean, this is the meta thing, right? It seems like so abstract, right? But in a sense, this is like, not doing this would result in failure. And people focus, oh, let's make the ads in this way, or in this way, or in this way, right? But sure, that's important, but that's micro. That's like, okay, we're gonna test a bunch of ads here, and we also need to know that where we should test, right? But more importantly than testing specific things, it's like this element, like statistical significance, is like so important, because otherwise the judgment of whether something works better than something else is like so skewed. And not doing the one variable split test but two variables or three variables or whatever results in so much wasteful spend, right? And without the cost cap, like scaling at high budgets is so unstable and so annoying. So in a sense, this is the top-down structure of Facebook, and everything else is non-important, right? Everything else is non-important. All the fancy gimmicks and whatever, they you know, sometimes they work, but they work because of some other reasons, and people look at what works and they make arbitrary conclusions and they preach about them, but it's not the actual reason. For example, there might be market conditions that are unknown, and the only reason why they were successful was because they were riding specific market conditions that they're not even aware of. Now, to be rational about this and scientific, we have to stick to those particular principles. And yeah, this is the logical approach. So this is the lesson about Facebook, and it's quite the final thing. It's like there, in a sense, it's not like, oh, this is good and this is good. It's like a top-down approach where, in a sense, I told you the conclusion, but there isn't anything left over. Like, I checked every single corner and this is it, like nothing else.